Hello, it's Pete from the Lassercast, and I'm rocking a comb over almost as good as Count Orlok's. I'm here with my good friend Dr. Zayas God, rocking a shirt from my favorite franchise, Terrified of
Uh,
2024's Nosferatu.
yeah. Where you broke up like almost instantly.
Wow. All right. Great. Technical difficulties right away. No, I said
Yeah.
welcome to the Lassercast.
Hey, what's going on? Happy holidays, everybody. It wouldn't be the same without minor technical issues. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, I'm excited to talk about this movie because I've been watching vampire movies and Dracula adaptations for probably the last month. You could watch a whole bunch of my short reviews of those movies on the channel. You returned last week for a review of Shadow of the Vampire, which is about the making of the original Nosferatu. So I've been up to my teeth in Nosferatu's for a while. So I was really excited to see this movie. And I know that me and Chris differ a little bit, and I want to know where you stand on this new movie.
Yes. All right. Well, let's do it. Let's go right into our ratings. Right. We don't on this channel routinely say, "Oh, we gave this a 7 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10." We don't do that all the time. But I think today would be a good day to do that, just to show what the fuck is going on with your phone.
I, technical difficulties, physical difficulties, who knows? I got it. I
Okay.
think good.
So I think just to kind of show how we feel about this movie right away without spoilers, why don't we give a number rating? Do you want to say yours since I kind of know yours already?
So I walked out of the theater, and my initial gut reaction, and I did a spoiler free short up on the channel. I gave it a 7 out of 10. I was left for my expectations. I was left disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean I didn't like it. Like I even said in my short review, I feel like giving it a 7 out of 10 is going to paint me in the minority. It's going to
Mm-hmm.
make me seem like I'm being more negative than I am. And I
Right.
have a feeling over the next 40 minutes, I will come across as very negative, even though I'm giving the movie a 7 out of 10. My only point was I walked into this movie fully expecting it to slot very comfortably into my top 10 horror list of 2024.
Right.
And it's been about 4 or 5 days since I've seen it. And if anything, my score has trended closer to the 6 than higher to the 8.
Gotcha.
And there's just no way I think this movie's going to crack my top 10. So that's where I stand on it.
Okay, okay. Danny, I'd hate to say this, but like me and you were actually more in sync this time around. And I think poor Chris over there, uh, he's on the other side. I would give it a 7.5 out of 10. I wouldn't give it an 8. I think that's pretty high. We talk about so many movies on this channel, and it has to be something really strong to get like an 8, a 9, and obviously a 10. So I'd say it's like a 7.5 for me. And I think that going along with what you just said, this movie was advertised like nothing else this year. Like they made it like this was the horror movie of the year. Like the advertising was everywhere. They really made the trailer and like the commercials seem like, whoa, this is gonna be really scary. Like this is gonna be something different. And then I just didn't find myself scared at all, and I thought I would be, especially after like seeing The Witch. Like I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be really scary." Um, I don't think it's a bad movie. I
No,
enjoyed
no.
it, but here's the thing: like, I think that I like this way more because we reviewed Shadow of the Vampire. You know?
I it's interesting that you say that because I've watched in just the last month, I've watched the original 1922 Nosferatu,
Yeah.
which is streaming free on Tubi. I watched Nosferatu the Vampire, directed by Werner Herzog, with Klaus Kinski as Dracula. Even though it's a Nosferatu movie, they changed the characters back to the original Stoker novel. So
Yeah.
I've watched that version, and I've rewatched Bram Stoker's Dracula, directed by Francis Ford Coppola from 1992. And of course, we did Shadow of the Vampire. So that's two Nosferatus, one very faithful, I'll call it,
Oh fuck.
adaptation,
If yeah,
and
yeah.
Shadow of the Vampire. So that's four movies on effectively the same source material.
Right.
And I think that might have dulled me for this movie in the sense that I kind of walked in, and my thought process walking in is Eggers is going to do something truly original with this
Right.
102-year-old film, with this over 100-year-old book.
Right.
He's going to, I don't need him to reinvent the Dracula wheel, but I thought we were going to get some truly innovative stuff.
Yeah.
And from and this is something that I've seen a lot of people talk about. Chris mentioned it. A lot of my other friends in the horror community have said this. This movie looks beautiful. It is
Absolutely.
gorgeous to watch. And I
Right.
said this in my short review. From a filmmaking standpoint, most of my positives in this movie are from just how freaking beautiful it was to watch,
Right.
the way that the shots are designed. I
Right.
wrote down. I give a ton of credit to Jaron Blaschke, who
Okay.
is the cinematographer on this
Good.
film. I
Hmm.
thought he
Hmm.
did a fucking amazing job. I like
Hmm.
everything looks so beautiful and symmetrical.
Right.
Um, and I love those aspects of it. And Eggers is a consummate filmmaker. The Witch, The Northman, The Lighthouse, which is still my favorite of his films. And
Interesting. Okay.
uh, this movie, from that technical standpoint, is fantastic.
Right.
Where this movie fell apart for me was some of the acting choices, not all
Okay.
of them, but
Okay.
some of the acting choices,
Yeah.
some of the character designs, and really just a nothing really to stand out other than, and I don't know, we're not talking spoilers yet. Are we talking spoilers?
Let's go into spoilers. We're 7 minutes in. We're
All
good.
right. Yes. So spoilers, everybody. Like, I feel like Robert Eggers' big contribution to Nosferatu lore was a mustache and a hanging dong.
Oh man.
And aside from that, if you took those two things out of it, it is still just very similar to three or four other movies that I just watched. It just happens to be incredibly well made with some acting in it that I genuinely love because I'll just say it. I will follow Willem Dafoe to the ends of the earth. I love that man. Um, he was so good in this movie. One of my problems was we don't meet him for the first hour.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
like I needed more Defoe the way Christopher Walken needed more cowbell.
Yeah.
And I'll give you if this movie was just Ralph Ineson, who played Dr. Severs, and Willem Dafoe, who plays Professor Albin Eberhard von Franz, if you just had those two characters
Yeah.
dealing with a vampire plague, I would have fucking loved it. But
Mm.
But instead, we had to go through another Jonathan Harker, Thomas Hutter. We have to go through another Mina, in this case, Ellen.
Ellen.
We have to go through another uh, Lucy, in this case, Anna and her husband.
Right.
I was forced to watch Aaron Taylor Johnson act again. I'm
Yes.
going to, because there is an insanely talented actor with the initials ATJ, Anya Taylor Joy. I think that in order to avoid mix up with the phrase ATJ, ATJ will now be Anya Taylor Joy, and Aaron Taylor Johnson will just become Fetch because Hollywood keeps trying to make him happen.
Oh
And
my God.
I,
That's
I,
good, man.
I'm sorry. I don't love him. And maybe, we even joked in our text thread, you said, well, none of you have seen the amazing acting in Craven the Hunter. And I went, oh no, I have.
Right, Jesus, yes, yeah, your Regal awards,
Yeah.
car, yeah, the dedication to it, man, is impressive. No, I look, it's funny. I got a little ticker over here. It says no one likes Aaron Taylor Johnson. It's funny because I went to go see this movie with my wife, her brother, his wife, and then my friend Jay. And I'm hoping my friend Jay is watching this review too. Um, but we go to this little place nearby in the same parking lot of the theater. It's called Pinballs, and we sit down. And we talk about the movie after a while, and no one knew who Aaron Taylor Johnson was. Like everyone was like, "Who's that guy?" And like, why did we have to follow him to his wife's grave at that one point? Like, what happened in that scene? And I had to explain to them who Aaron Taylor Johnson was. I was like, he was kick ass. He was Quicksilver in the Avengers. And, a lot of times it got like kind of blank stares from them. Like, who are you talking about?
He was in Godzilla.
I know I was going to bring up Godzilla, but I feel like they didn't see that or like could remember that original MonsterVerse version of it. But yeah, him and his character kind of represent this movie for me in a lot of ways because a lot of it is just sort of like you're just waiting for the story beats because you've seen other versions of this. So you're kind of like, okay, let's get to this part. Okay, let's get to this part. And so it's like, okay, he's this character that's basically playing, I guess, the guy that was like betrothed to Lucy in the Bram Stoker's version.
He's basically playing who Carrie Elways was
Right.
in Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. Yeah.
Right. Now, when I go with that group to go see movies, when I go with my wife and her brother, not necessarily Jay, but like definitely my wife and her brother, they are usually very harsh when it comes to horror movies. And they are very harsh when it comes to movies that are like remakes or like something from a franchise, because they're always like, they've already told this story. And I kind of don't feel that exact way because I feel like you can remake something, you can tell something in the same franchise that we've seen. Like you can make sequels, but you want to make something that's like different and kind of validating why you made this. And I kept thinking, like, why did Robert Eggers consider this to be like a passion project? Like, why did he want to remake this 1922 film? And I don't really necessarily have an answer besides to make like a beautiful, like I know with The Witch, for instance, one of the things that was interesting about The Witch was that they talked in that sort of old English dialect.
Yeah.
And I feel like in this movie, the dialogue is like of its time too. It's supposed to be like Germany in the early 1800s.
Yes, the early German states of the 1830s filled with English people who speak in an English accent.
Right.
That was it. That was another thing that irked me right off the bat was Dracula, Bram Stoker's novel, is set in England. Obviously, you have the Transylvanian vampire who comes to London, or he comes to England. Nosferatu, because they couldn't get because Bram Stoker's wife blocked them. Murnau changed all the names of the characters and changed the location to Germany. And so my question right off the bat was, if this movie is doing Nosferatu and it's Hutter instead of Harker and it's Ellen instead of by the way, did you notice I think the cat's name was Greta, which I only picked up on because we watched Shadow of the Vampire.
I didn't even notice that, but that's awesome.
Yeah. Instead of Van Helsing, we get Von Franz. So if you're going to set the movie in Germany, would it have killed anybody to hire a German-speaking actor or an actor with a German accent? Like when you have Nicholas Hoult, Lily Rose Depp, Aaron Taylor Johnson trying his hardest, basically everybody doing British accents, including some English actors.
Right.
It just felt weird to be so committed to setting the movie in Germany.
Yeah.
Especially at it's not like modern Germany where you probably find a bunch of English people. It's 1830s. So that kind of irked me right off the bat.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I to your point, nothing felt like the guy who played Knock. Knock is what's
Um,
that?
what's his
Renfield.
face? Renfield, yeah. Nicholas
That
Holt was
act,
Renfield too.
yes, that actor was fine, but he was not anything different to the Knock character than we've seen in, Tom Waits do in Dracula, or the original Knock from the original film, Simon McBurney, whose name is that Roman Polanski. Yes, he was good, but he doesn't do anything to stand out. And you brought up the witch. One of the things I loved about the witch is, and this is maybe the history teacher nerd in me versus the horror fan in me,
Sure.
is I felt like I was transported back to the 1600s in
Hmm.
like the colonial time before, and I felt like I was there with that family. And I was
Hmm.
there with Ralph Ineson and Anya Taylor Joy and that group and Black Phillip, and we were all together in that environment.
Yeah.
And I felt like, okay, maybe that's the purpose of this. Maybe we're gonna get transported back and we're gonna watch a plague, besiege this little German town in the 1830s, and we're gonna get a kind of a, maybe post COVID, we're gonna see a different take on the way that the vampire plague spreads. And it just felt like, no, he's doing those scenes that I've seen in two other Nosferatu movies. And okay, and the rats. And okay, I just saw Herzog's movie, and is the rats are there. And so I come back to what was different, and it comes back to, here we are almost 17 minutes in, it comes back to Orlok basically being a a giant Cossack. Uh I don't know about you, but I didn't send this to the group chat. But once I found out Chris sent it, I sent him a text with a picture of Peter Stormare with the
Oh, from
full
Green Lantern.
with the full mustache and beard, and I was just like, that's all I thought of the entire movie.
Oh, oh, I
And
got you. I got you.
I kept waiting for Count Orlok to talk about the difference between American components and Russian components, all made in Taiwan.
Gotcha. Armageddon. Okay. Yeah. For some reason, I think it's early in the morning. I was thinking you were talking about Peter Skarsgård or
Oh, well,
Sarsgaard from Green Lantern, where he has that big head and the right. But no, you're talking about the guy from Fargo, but then in
he's
Armageddon.
also Satan in
Right. Yes.
Constantine.
Yes. He's
Yeah.
amazing. That's an
But
amazing
if
sequence.
you Google image him right now, one of the first pictures that comes up is him with a full mustache and beard. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh my God, they wouldn't have even needed makeup.
Oh, oh man. And he would have done an excellent job because he's an incredible actor too.
Yeah.
But no, Danny, I think you might have actually hit the nail on the head for me, man. I think you kind of pointed out exactly what I was thinking. You're exactly right. Like The Witch is so good because you have that isolated feeling, that feeling that you're cut off from everybody, and it's really scary and really tense because you're just so scared for these people in the middle of nowhere, right? This movie, it's just because they're like doing the exact story beats that they have to hit those beats and they can't play into that tension, that fear of what it would be like to like be preyed upon by this creature. Because basically the story that we saw in Shadow of the Vampire, which I'm sure is in that original Nosferatu, which I did not see, it's very, very similar to Bram Stoker's Dracula if you watch the Francis Ford Coppola version, where it's like, Jonathan Harker goes to Count Dracula, or in this case, Thomas goes to Count Orlok's castle. He meets him. It's strange. And then, Count Orlok comes to Germany, just like Dracula comes to Britain, London, to, find Mina, in this case, Ellen. So it's like we know everything that's going to happen. And the way that they show it, like I thought the Count Orlok was interesting, and I really think probably the big change was they made it that Ellen like summoned him. I
So
think that's
that
the major change.
yeah, that like she had like apparently been having dreams of him and like was I guess connected with him. And I guess that does kind of remind me of Gary Oldman and Winona Ryder, where
Right.
she feels the connection because of the thing in the where they were married in a past life, and
Right.
so you get. But so I did like that. What did you think of Lily Rose Depp? Because
um,
I've heard because this is what I love about the horror community. I have people who I know, very trusted people, like people who work in the industry, who love this movie, and I have people who I know who work in the industry that really don't like this movie.
yeah.
And even between just you, me, Chris, our opinions are. I saw a tweet from I think it's the director JT Molnar, the director of Strange Darling,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
who he just tweeted or I just read it before where it was like if you don't appreciate Lily Rose Depp's performance, you don't know what you're watching. And I was like, shit. Uh because I love Strange Darling so much. And I went into this movie like thinking is Lily Rose Depp going to end up on like my list of best actresses in 2025 4 and I just wasn't into her performance as much, and I don't know if it's her or if it's the fact that. And again, I made this joke to Chris between this movie and then a day later, I saw Baby Girl with Nicole Kidman, and it just felt like I had spent 4 hours in the movie theater watching women orgasm and
Yeah.
do orgasm face for
Right.
4 hours because that's basically what Baby Girl is from beginning to end, and that's basically what Lily Rose Depp like. She's convulsing, her eyes are rolling into the back of her head. She's summoning Orlok. It's her performance is good, but it
Yeah.
just left me like I wanted something other than it felt like she never got out of that one gear for
Mm-hmm.
me.
Yeah. That is a really great point. It's funny because you talk about the horror community and you talk about social media in general. And I think that when people talk about movies, they get really defensive or they get really critical of other fans. And I think that, like, if someone says something disparaging about a performance or about a specific character or an actor, people can get really negative about them or be like, you missed the point. But I think that, like, when I watched this movie, if we just base it on how I felt watching it, I would say that, like, for a good portion of the movie, I kind of just didn't want to have scenes with her in them. I just wanted it to cut to Count Orlok or Willem Dafoe's character. Like, I just wasn't like, oh, I want to see more of her. Like, this is the most exciting stuff when it's her and Count Orlok. I didn't feel that way, but it was not consistent. It wasn't like I felt that way throughout the whole movie. I did actually, in some scenes, I was extremely impressed with her acting, especially this one scene, like you said, where her eyes like roll into the back of her head and she sticks out her tongue. I mean, she seems, the people I was with, they kind of compared her to Reagan in The Exorcist. And I think that that was like an accurate, description. I think that,
So
like, that was impressive. Go ahead.
yeah, and again, I'm not talking down her performance. I think she's a talented actress. I
Right,
just I don't know if I enjoyed the writing of her character as much
right,
it
right.
in this movie. But I will say she does things in this movie. Chris made this point. I've seen this point a bunch of times, and it takes me back. Did you see the first Omen yet?
Not yet, man. It's on
Okay.
Hulu though, right?
Yes.
Yeah, gotcha. I'll watch it. I'll watch it.
One of my favorite things about the Disney Plus Hulu merger is that now you can get like some extremely crazy horror movies that are streaming on Disney Plus, which is fucking amazing.
Right, right, right.
But I said this after watching the first Omen earlier this year. There's a scene in the first Omen that reminded me of Isabella Johnny in Possession.
There you go. Okay.
And we covered that on the
Mm-hmm.
channel.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and you know the scene I'm talking about,
Of
her
course.
in the subway with the milk and everything.
Right.
There's a scene in the first Omen that reminded me where it was so obvious, and in a good way, that they were paying homage to that scene, and the actress in the first Omen is phenomenal in that moment. And I think that Lily Rose Depp was also channeling Isabella Johnny in Possession for a lot of this movie. And I thought she does a great job of doing that kind of acting, that like possessed, like my I have no control of my physical body. Like she's fucking great at that, Lily Rose Depp in this movie. I
Yeah.
just again I basically I think 2024 horror pay owes a lot to Possession from
Sure.
1980,
Sure.
and weirdly, maybe and we talked about this in Shadow of a Vampire, how the Nosferatu slash Draculas seem to be very incestuous. We obviously have Willem Dafoe carrying over from Shadow of the Vampire.
Right.
I'm talking about Isabella Johnny in Possession. She plays Ellen in Werner Herzog's 1979
Oh shit.
Nosferatu the Vampire. So,
That's
so
cool.
Lily Rose Depp is basically doing Isabella Johnny, and she even looks very similar. She has like
Hmm.
those big dark eyes, and that like really just stare through the screen. I I don't know. She was okay, but like I saw the cast of this movie and I was expecting to be kind of blown away by it, and I really, outside of Defoe and Ralph Ineson, I kind of just was, and I think for Ralph Ineson it's more his voice.
Right. Of course. Of course.
And I still remember him in he was also in the first Omen, by the way, so great year for Ralph Ineson.
Oh
uh
wow.
Yeah, and he's also, of course, in he's the father in The Witch.
The
So
witch. Right. Right.
he goes back with Eggers.
Right. I was going to ask you, Danny. There's a comment on here. I don't know if this is from a troll or if this is someone you know, and this is like an inside joke. But Mick Blizz is saying, "Danny, will you buy me this official bed from the movie?" I don't get that.
Yeah, sure, Mike. Anytime. Only if we could reenact the final scene in this movie.
Oh my God, Jesus Christ! All right. Well, let's talk about what you just said. Let's unpack it. I think one thing for me, and this is an unfair thing, I think that Lily Rose Depp looks so much like young Johnny Depp that sometimes that would kind of take me out of it too. You know? Uh, uh,
She
uh, go ahead.
she does look like her father a lot. She also reminded me a lot of Christina Ricci
Mm-hmm.
from
Mm-hmm.
No Problem. She reminded me a lot of Christina Ricci in some of her, like Sleepy Hollow
Yep.
almost. She
That's a good
reminded
point.
me a lot of Winona Ryder, going back to maybe even like the Beetlejuice era, like young Winona
Sure.
Ryder. So
Sure.
she does have, I mean, when your father
Oh,
is,
what's Danny?
usually, uh, what happened? Did
You're
we?
freezing. Am I freezing?
Nope. Now you're back. Am I
Oh,
back?
you're back. Go ahead.
Hey. Uh, I was just gonna say, like, I one term that I've grown to really hate in Hollywood or in any media is nepo baby,
Mm,
because, like, yeah, that's how life works. Like, your parents open doors for their children because they love their children. It's not like if Lily Rose Depp was talentless, she wouldn't be in this movie.
mhm.
And I don't, I think that term gets thrown around way too much whenever there's a celebrity's child getting it's not like, they cast some great actor's kid who's never acted before. She's like already put up a decent number of credits. She's extremely talented, and I feel like that's just, it's that term just gets thrown around too much.
Sure.
Um, but she was excellent in this movie. I don't know if I loved her character. I think I liked her performance more than I liked her character, if
Mhm,
that makes
mhm.
sense.
No, of
So,
course.
but like, I also it comes back to my biggest problem with the movie is that, and I think you've said similar things. Like we know these beats.
Yeah.
Like I know that there's going to be some kind of connection between Orlok and between the Dracula and Harker's wife. I know that you know Hutter slash Harker is going to disappear into the woods and he's going to meet. I would have loved to spend more time in that little Cossack village
Yep.
that Nicholas Holt in. We
Yep.
get like this one awesome scene
Yep.
of him spending a night
Yep.
in this
Yep.
fucking cabin
Right.
where they scream there's a vampire, they go out, they dig up a coffin, they stab it. I'm like, oh cool. And then he
Yeah.
wakes up and he's alone
Right.
and he gets picked up by the carriage and it's off to Orlok's castle. So
Yep.
it's like we got teased with this one really cool moment that maybe we could explore something a little bit different, and then it's off to the story beats that we've seen several times before.
Yeah.
They're done well, they're shot beautifully, but it's the same story beats.
Yeah. Yeah. I 100% agree with you that like that sequence where he's in that village and the guy just like randomly laughs at him as he's approaching him. Everyone else starts laughing. That and then like he speaks with that one woman who like warns him you're gonna be under his shadow. Like that's a great fucking sequence. And my expectations were going higher and higher once I watched that. I want to point out one thing that was kind of fun for me too. At our screening, there was something wrong with the projector at first, and my friend Jay went and talked to the guy and he fixed it. But one really weird thing that happened was throughout the beginning, like the first 15 minutes of the movie, there was this pink on the screen where it would be on like the characters' faces, like it would just be like lines on their faces, and sometimes it'd be on the walls and stuff in the movie. And I thought it was part of the movie. I was like, oh, is this some kind of weird choice that Robert Eggers made? Because it was like this bright pink, right? And I thought that, like, in Bram Stoker's Dracula, when he's the wolf creature and he goes and he sees Lucy and, like, you can see her, like, blood flowing in her body when he's looking at
Yeah.
her. I thought that Robert Eggers was doing something like that. I was like, oh, this is interesting. This is a cool choice.
Nosferatu has predator vision,
Right. And that one, that carriage sequence, which, it's very similar in feeling to the carriage sequence in Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula, right? But I feel like that is a superior scene in Coppola's version, like where the hand comes off from the carriage and it's real spooky, and just the design of it all is so interesting. This one, it's eerie and creepy when the carriage kind of like just turns and you don't see it off screen and the doors open. Like, I thought that was well done, like you said, but I feel like, no, I've seen this better in the Coppola version, so this isn't doing anything for me. But I just want to point out, though, that shot, just like so many shots in this movie, you have the main character centered in the frame and then like really interesting stuff around him. For some reason, since this was like a flawed copy or like there was something wrong with the projection, there was like a pink spiral behind Nicholas Holt. And I was like, this is awesome. And then I was like, am I on drugs? No. It just like I think you make a good point that like where it starts to stray and feel different from the Francis Ford Coppola version, that's where it gets exciting. And I think that one thing that we haven't even mentioned at all, you kind of mentioned the character, but we didn't talk about Emma Corrin and her character is essentially Lucy from Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah. I love her. I thought she was great
Right.
in Deadpool and Wolverine.
Right.
I thought she was excellent.
Mm-hmm.
I do my whole thing with that entire family, her, Aaron Taylor Johnson, and they have two daughters.
Right.
I was basically sitting there going, okay, this is all just a setup so we could see this horrific scene of
Right.
Orlok eating these two girls.
Right.
And we get that.
Right.
But it's like a kind of blink and you miss it. I thought that moment would be more gasp out loud, and it's just kind of, she walks in and he's got them both up. Cool scene. It just I that whole moment felt rushed.
Yeah.
Um,
You remember
and
there's that movie that I haven't seen, but you and I talked about, where like this woman, it's like a found footage movie, and this woman stumbles upon this old lady who's got like her mouth over the kid's head. It's at the very
oh,
end
whoa,
of the
whoa, whoa, yeah, yeah.
what? What
Oh,
movie is that?
fuck.
It's like it's not The Ritual, but it's got a title like that, right? Like it's like
Oh God, I know it. It's an awesome movie. I'm having a brain fart and I record on my phone, which is the only way I could look things up, but it's driving me fucking crazy. But yeah, it's great. It's like
in
a
the comments you'll say what it is when you look it up later. But
yeah, I'll
that was the vibe that I got. I mean, I haven't even seen that fucking movie, but I've seen that scene. And that's the vibe I got when he was drinking the blood from the daughter, you know?
yeah.
But to me, like, because I've never seen the original 1922 Nosferatu, and in Shadow of the Vampire, they don't really go into that sequence in the movie if there is a Lucy kind of friend. But I felt like she was the antithesis of the Lucy from the Francis Ford Coppola Dracula.
Yes, 100%. Like Lucy that was Sadie Frost. She was incredibly horny.
Right.
Uh she was like, I have three men. I'm gonna do each one, and then I'm gonna pick one, and then I'm gonna get married, and then I'm gonna have affairs. And she
Yeah.
like has like her and Winona Ryder have like a kiss scene, and I'm like, what? I I think I think this is part of my biggest issue with this movie is that we keep talking about Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula
Yes. Yes.
because, and I said this to Chris, and I enjoyed. Again, I feel like I always come across very negative on a movie that I'm giving a 7 out of 10. I I enjoyed this movie. I thought it was beautifully shot. I don't foresee a situation where I'm ever going to watch Robert Eggers' Nosferatu again.
Sure. Sure.
I will watch Bram Stoker's Dracula by Francis Ford Coppola again the minute we stop recording. And I just watched it like a month ago. Because that movie is so gleefully over the top. It's beautiful in a different way. That has a bright red color palette. This is obviously very muted blue, gray, very dark and ominous. That movie is loud and fucking over the top and insane, and it's just such an easy rewatch.
Yep.
And yes, there's characters in that movie that are terrible at doing their accents, but you can almost laugh at them and have a good time with it. And I felt this movie, because it's so serious, you're like, yeah. So again, 7 out of 10. I don't know if I'm ever gonna rewatch this movie,
Yeah.
and I'm definitely gonna rewatch uh Coppola's film. I'm probably going to rewatch the original Nosferatu again, just because maybe Charlotte wants to watch it, or I'll show it to my horror movie club at work as like a piece of history, and for its historical significance. Uh, I think we should talk a little bit about Orlok before we go, because we've gone like
Thank you.
38
Yes.
minutes and we've just kind of called him. I did send another I sent another image to my friends where I put a picture of Boris and Natasha from Rocky and Bullwinkle, and I said Orlok and Ellen.
Right. 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 No, I actually liked his accent and the fact that he talked in this other language. He's talked in the Dacian language, which is apparently an extinct language. It's from the Transylvanian region, but
So
Eggers wanted him to talk in that language.
yeah, it makes sense geographically. See,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and that takes me back to, why are all of these British people in Germany?
right.
Because you cast Orlok to sound like he's Eastern European in Eastern Europe.
Yeah,
Great. Okay, I can deal with that. I'm
right.
okay with that. Like him sounding like, you know, a a Cossack. I also like that they draw back to the image of Vlad the Impaler that we all know, like the painting of Vlad the Impaler with the big mustache. They use that in Bram Stoker's Dracula again at the very beginning. but I like that they kind of made Orlok a living version of that painting of Vlad the Impaler with the big handlebar mustache, the big
Yeah,
thick, almost Russian Cossack accent.
right.
That was fine, but I did I did think his look was there was something off about it. And again, maybe it's the fact that I've been inundated with Nosferatus for a month, and I thought I was kind of expecting something, and
Yeah.
instead he kind of felt like, you made the joke about Peter Skarsgård in what was that movie?
Green
Green
Lantern. Green
Lantern.
Lantern.
He felt like what would happen if Vlad the Impaler got some leader juice dropped on the back of his head, like in the
Yeah, the
Incredible
Hulk.
Hulk
Yeah,
movie?
yeah, yeah.
And you know, and then like you get like the full body view of him at the end. It just it felt like I don't know. It just didn't feel like the best version. I still think Max Shrek is the scariest Orlok.
Yes, yes,
Uh,
yes.
and that that was 102 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't think Skarsgård was bad, but I
No.
don't think he was scary. Like you mentioned that early in the review that you didn't think that, like I didn't find him scary at all.
Right.
Uh can I ask you and I hate even like asking this question. Did you have people in your theater laughing at all?
I don't think so. I might have laughed at a couple of parts though, honestly. And I
Because
think that I might have laughed at Lily Rose Depp, unfortunately. I know that sounds like, you
no,
know,
I had people in my theater. Not many. Uh,
yeah, yeah,
to be fair, there were not many people in the theater. But
yeah.
I did see this 9:30 on Christmas Eve.
Oh, there
Like
you go.
so, yeah. So it was late at night. It was Christmas Eve. And I don't know how many people were coming out to Nosferatu. I think there was probably 50 people in the theater total. But there were some people that laughed both at some of Lily Rose Depp's enjoyment of certain scenes, and I think there were people that laughed or at least like chuckled a little bit at some of the Orlok moments.
Sure.
And obviously that's not what you want. That's not what the filmmaker wants. And I think Chris might have even mentioned that people in his theater chuckled a little bit as well. I think that when you make a choice to like exaggerate the accent to change the look of a character so significantly, the thing with Skarsgård is he did this already with It. He took a
Right.
beloved horror movie character
Yeah.
and they completely changed the look of him, but he was terrifying as Pennywise.
Right.
And I think it comes down to you could see it was Bill Skarsgård, and he has that face. His regular human face looks creepy as hell. He's like a good looking man who
Yeah.
he has that like the smile that you can see that on Pennywise. Like think about the first 30 minutes of Barbarian, right? You're pretty sure he's like getting ready to kill her the whole time until you realize, oh, he's not the killer in that movie.
Right.
And I think that the makeup on Orlok, I think Bill Skarsgård himself was too covered up, and
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't see him emoting in this character. Also, he's basically kept in the dark for the first 2/3 of the movie. Like even
Oh,
when he's
yeah.
fully on screen, he's completely in the dark. And so I think that kind of hurt the portrayal of Orlok in that I don't think the movie allowed Bill Skarsgård to really get into this performance the way he did Pennywise.
Yeah. Really, really good point. And I agree with you 100% on that. You have this potential with him as a character actor, almost like an Andy Serkis, where he's starting to kind of play these like freaky characters. He's kind of known for, I mean, I know he was in The Crow this year, and he was in some kind of movie, like a post apocalyptic movie a couple months ago, too. Like he
Was he the
obviously, what's
Boy
that?
Kills World?
Yeah,
Was
yeah. I
that
didn't
it?
see that. You saw it?
No, but I think it's streaming on Hulu.
Okay. Well, he obviously he's in like genre stuff. He was just in the most recent John Wick movie. He's a great find for this kind of movie, but you're right. Like they kind of don't use that to its best effect. They're kind of trying to do two things at once because they're kind of making him like this eccentric, creepy character and getting a performance out of him, but they're also trying to make him like a force of nature and just kind of use that iconography that we've seen from the original Nosferatu movie where like, his shadows are on the walls. There's an incredible fucking shot in this movie where he's on the balcony of his house that he's purchased and he's reaching out and we go over his shoulder and then we follow his shadow over the town. Amazing. They showed that in the advertising. So you're kind of going back and forth trying to like, I'd say humanize him because they are still trying to do the romance angle like they did in Bram Stoker's Dracula. But then you're also trying to treat him like he's like this force of nature, this like evil, this eternal evil, And I think that by trying to do both, it fails. Whereas I think in like Bram Stoker's Dracula is incredibly powerful, but you like truly feel that romance from his character. This version, this Count Orlok, it's not really romantic. It's more like what's interesting about this movie, right? Is that if you look at it, if you break it down, it's basically a woman that she was adventurous when she was younger because she was so closed off from the world. She like reached out for something more, right? And unfortunately, what she finds is this fucking demonic presence, right? This Nosferatu. And then like it basically comes back to haunt her once she's married. It's like my ex-boyfriend that I have a history with is back and he's this fucked up guy.
The movie really emphasizes the women will always go with bad boys.
Yes.
Yeah. You can never please me the way he can. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Like my mom wants to see this movie. She really wants to see this movie. She keeps saying, "Want me to buy tickets for Nosferatu?" And I'm like, "Oh fuck, I gotta go see the scene where like Lily Rose Depp is like at crotch level with Nicholas Hoult, and then they have sex like real awkwardly. I can't wait to watch that with my mom." But no, go ahead.
The other thing, and this speaks to everything you're saying because it builds up to the ending.
Yeah.
I thought, and again, I'm sitting there for over 2 hours. Exactly. I agree with what Mike just put. He does have a very he's a good-looking man, but he has a sinister look to him in real life. And I think that he was too covered up in this movie. But the ending of this movie is basically a mirror of the endings of the previous Nosferatu movies where Ellen has to willingly give herself to the only thing that can save humanity is the woman giving herself over to the vampire, letting herself and basically get drained until the sun comes up so that the sun can kill him.
Right.
And while and I am waiting here for 2 hours and I'm waiting for again that's something different that Eggers is going to really bring to this new version of Nosferatu. And I'm thinking, oh, maybe at the end, maybe for the first time, she's going to survive and become the vampire.
Right.
So in Herzog's movie, at the end, Orlok dies. He doesn't disappear. The sun literally kills him, and his body is just laying on the floor, dead. And Isabella Johnny is dead, but Harker grows the fangs like Nosferatu and becomes the vampire. And he becomes the next, because he's been fed off of the whole movie. So he becomes the next like vampire, and the movie ends with like Harker becoming a vampire.
Huh.
And I was kind of like, oh, are they going to do something where Ellen becomes the vampire, or where Ellen suckers him in and then like throws him out the window and he burns up in the sun and it's this great big. And I'm like, no, he's just on top of her in his weird body with his skinny legs and
Yeah,
his
yeah.
dong,
It's like
and
chicken
he's
legs. Yeah.
yeah, and his big dong, and he's uh sucking away, and the sun comes up, and I'm like, okay, so that's it. They just do the Nosferatu ending, okay,
Right.
and so the movie ended, and it fades to black, and I'm just kind of like, okay, um, I don't really like. It was good, but uh, and that's
Yeah.
kind of the way I walked out of the theater. And considering my expectations, I was a little disappointed.
Yeah.
I will say I did say earlier that I don't see a reason for me to rewatch this movie, and I'll step back on that because have you seen Longlegs yet?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I saw Longlegs, and like the day it opened, super excited. People, everybody's saying it's the new Silence of the Lambs. It's the scariest movie of the year, and I kind of walked out of Longlegs same exact way, going 7 out of 10. Like, like they built it up too much.
Right. 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 Right.
But then Charlotte wanted to watch it, so I rented it on I guess Fandango at home or something, and we watched it. And sitting at home months after seeing it, I was like, now I fucking get it. Now I really enjoyed. And Longlegs probably jumped up from a 7 out of 10 to about an 8.5, maybe 9, and it's probably going to end up in my top 10.
Nice.
And maybe 5, 6 months from now, maybe summer vacation comes, and I'm sitting here, and I'm bored, and I'm thinking I'm not as horny as I should be. Let me put on something to really get the juices flowing. And I put on Eggers Nosferatu when it's on streaming or VOD.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll hit me a little bit differently.
Yes.
But so, but yeah, as of right now, I'm sticking with my 7 out of 10.
Okay. Okay. Ah, wow. Well, that's a problem I don't usually ever experience is saying I'm not as horny as I should be. But what do you call I was gonna say that like Mike Bongiorno, that's a segue right there, right? Mike Bongiorno from Pop Culture Man Children, he's been telling me his thoughts on this movie, and I think he liked it more than both of us did. But he was talking about how he thought it was gonna have a different ending too. He thought something along the lines of what you said, where he thought that Ellen was gonna be empowered by the end.
Oh yeah,
Because
he actually responded to me on Facebook, and we were talking back and forth.
yeah,
Yeah,
because like he talked about how the movie is like a criticism on hysteria, or it like talks or like features hysteria, right? Like I know we just covered the show Hysteria. You guys should go check that out if you want to see that Bruce Campbell show, and me and Danny talking about it. Really great show. But no, we're talking about the idea of like men sort of like gaslighting women, men telling women that they're crazy, even though they might legitimately have some kind of medical issue. They're saying it's like some kind of mental issue because they're women. And that is the way that Lily Rose Depp is treated for the majority of the movie until Willem Dafoe finally has this conversation with her, which that was Sherry's favorite part of the movie is this one scene where like Willem Dafoe walks Ellen to the house and it's the snow's falling. And he has this one really great line where he's like, oh, if you were living in heathen times, you would have been like a priestess or something like that. He says some kind of great line to her where basically because she's living in this era, she's seen as like a mad woman. Whereas in another era, she would be like she'd have like high status because of her abilities,
yeah.
I really like that scene as well. But I also feel like just like Mike Bongiorno, just like you, where it's like they don't really do anything with her. And I think it's because Eggers is like being a slave to the source material. He's just sort of wanting to be faithful. And so they don't do anything truly interesting with that character.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree. It At the end of the day, look, it's at the end of the day, I this is another movie for me that is really a disappointment because of my expectations.
Right.
It It's a well-made film. Most of the acting is good. Uh, there are some performances that I truly love. And look, I'm gonna go first night to whatever movie Robert Eggers does next. But like, if I'm ranking his first four movies, his four films that are in the genre, for me, this is at the bottom.
Right.
Like for me, it's The Lighthouse, The Witch, The Northman, and this.
Mhm.
And again, that's like 10 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10, 8.5 out of 10, 7 out of 10. So it's like he hasn't made anything bad,
Right.
but I just I loved his first two movies so much that I genuinely was hoping to walk out of this and be like, oh, that's top five of the year.
Right.
And yeah, it
Yep.
it's fine.
I feel the exact way, man. You kind of wrapped it up all nicely there with 5 minutes to spare. So I think that gives us some time to promote some stuff on the channel. You want to go ahead and do your job there, Mr.
Uh
Turkel?
I mean, we've come to the end of the year. I would like to think that we are going to be pulling together our top 10 to get that
Absolutely.
out as soon as we can. I know Charlotte and I are trying to watch a bunch of movies. I have a few queued up that I want to get through in the next
Right.
couple of vacation days. And
Right.
other than that, we have our Shadow of the Vampire review, a bunch of shorts on other vampire films. You mentioned Hysteria. If you want to go back, that's still on Peacock. You can check that out.
Right.
So yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, I have to play catch up and watch a bunch of horror movies, but as we do every year, and we've been doing this for like three. This is, I think, our fourth year now doing this channel. Later in January, Danny and I do our best of the previous years. So I have to catch up to my friend over here. But yeah, we got a lot to talk about for 2024. Make sure you guys, if you haven't subscribed to the Lastercast, that you do, because Danny's always popping out videos, and we do this at least once a week too. But until then, I'm not sure what we're covering next, but we'll have something good for you next week.